For the past 9 years, I've been living in the same apartment complex, occupying apartment number 87, in a small little town smack dab in the center of New Mexico. For the sake of some anonymity, we'll say my name is Zach. It's idyllic to some, and a nightmare for others. See, this apartment complex is one of 3 or so things this town has going for it. The complex, the church, and the gas station. A perfect little triangle of mediocrity. If you're into small talk, long days of nothingness, and the occasional ghost hunter or self-proclaimed healer, preacher, what have you, then this place is just a little slice of paradise. 13 years ago, I left college halfway through my second year after having a bit of a breakdown. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know I wasn't going to get any satisfaction wasting my inheritance on lectures and tuition. My parents and I had always loved a good adventure, be it hiking, camping, or long road trips to nowhere. Sitting in a stuffy dorm room for 2 years, then renting a dingy campus house didn't sit right with me. I sold a lot of what I had besides my phone, computer, and car and set off. I traveled west as far as my car could take me, hitting every little nook and cranny I could find, and that's how I ended up here. With a few sputters and some black smoke spilling from the exhaust, my destination was set for me. For reasons I'll get to later, I'd rather not divulge exactly where I'm talking about, i.e., some of you are crazy and this place doesn't need more of that. Like I said above, we have the 3 main attractions of this desolate oasis. We can start with the church. It is, in fact, just a regular old church. Nothing hiding in the basement, there isn't one, and no crazy sacrifices happening on the weekends. I know that the pastor, John, lives in the back room with his little dog, Charles. He doesn't even really step foot in the complex, even for food. Actually, as I'm writing this out, I can only think of 2 times I've ever seen him step foot near the complex. One of the second-floor tenants, Miss Mayer, brings him lunch and supper every day, like clockwork. There's a good handful of people that attend church every Sunday morning, religiously, and every couple of weeks there's some sort of happening in the yard adjacent to it, like a cookout or a birthday party. We all usually attend those. It's a nice time and no one's ever pushy. The church is a nice little constant for all of us, even those who don't practice. Even in the worst of times, you can look out the window and see Pastor John tending to his little flower garden, or taking his dog on a walk, and it'll bring a smile to your face. The gas station is the town's gossip center. Most people who pass through town stop in to top off their tanks, drain their bladders, and grab an, albeit probably slightly expired drink or snack before hitting the road again. You know the way gas station workers are depicted in 80s movies? A younger guy, a little burnout, and always just a little bit high. Now, at about 65 pounds, 25 years, and a receding hairline, and boom, you've got yourself a Winkle. James Van Winkle, to his parents, who he inherited the place from, and just Winkle to us here in town. You can't walk down the street without hearing the faint, fuzzy tubes of Night Ranger or Whitesnake playing through the aisles and open doors of the gas station. The station, as I call it, seeing as it doesn't have a name or even a real sign. I actually tend to spend a bit more time there than most of the other residents. Winkle's a cool guy, and actually lives a few doors down from me in the complex. Sometimes he invites me over to watch movies, and yes, they're on VHS. But it's always a good time. He stays in the back of the station, a nice little room decorated like it's right out of Back to the Future, tube TV, posters and all. The apartment complex is really the shining light of the town. It's basically its own little ecosystem and has been since the owner, Mr. Rags, built it sometime back in the 70s. I think it may have been part of a social or living experiment that just turned into a full-time thing. Mr. Rags sounds like a funny last name, but it's the only one he's ever given the tenants here. Nobody knows if it's just a fun joke he started, since he only dresses himself in linen shirts and pants, or if it is actually his given name. As is written in any story, he does live at the top of the complex, on the 17th floor. The highest occupied level is actually the 15th, and there isn't a button on the ancient elevator for the 16th floor. Everyone seems to think it's just a floor for HVAC or storage or something, but I have my own thoughts on that. Following the ecosystem-like setup, the complex has a kitchen downstairs that's communal, but it's always served as a cafeteria of sorts. A portion of everyone's rent goes into a fund, and a couple that lives on floor 15 go to the nearest grocery with it, then cook lunch and dinner every weeknight. The rest of the time, it's fend for yourself. Which really isn't bad considering we have plenty of leftovers in the fridges, a lot of easy to prepare food in the freezers, and a heaping stockpile of cereal and milk. The couple usually cooks extra meals though, for both the pastor and Mr. Rags. As for the reason of my post, I guess it'd be twofold. I've been here going on almost 10 years now, which is something I never thought I'd do. I didn't think I'd be leaving a claustrophobic atmosphere of college labs and dorm rooms to end up loving such a speck of a town like this place. I guess I want to just get my thoughts down as a way to wrap my head around that and the second reason. This place isn't okay. I don't have any other way to describe it. Waking up every day, going to sleep every night, something just doesn't feel right. It's a constant, but no one that drives people away. On the contrary, I think it brings them in. It's rarely ever been anything too malicious or evil, but it's gotten very close to crossing that line more times than I or the others would like. I think the stories I've heard and the things I've seen with my own eyes deserve a carved out little corner of the aether. That'd be you, Internet. I'll start us off with something light, right from the day I arrived. It was July 3rd, 2015, and hot as ever. I'd just driven through a little mining town, its last remaining residents clinging to whatever they had left to call theirs. I was about 2 hours away from any sort of population center that I knew of, when my car started to make some not-so-nice sounds. It lasted every bit of 5 minutes until the black smoke started to pour out of the hood. I pulled off to the side of half-baked road I was on and opened up the beast's belly. I'd never been good with cars, so it was a futile effort. I sat there for about an hour, service on my phone going in and out, when I heard the low rumble of an old car cresting the horizon. It took a minute or two to come into view, but my savior was inching his way towards me. A wood-paneled station wagon with nothing other than my would-be friend Winkle came into full view as he slowed down to see the burnout mess on the shoulder. "Dude, what's up? Everything does not look so good over there," he said, a look of genuine worry on his face. "Yeah, I don't know. I was driving along and it seems like she's really given up on me this time. You know any towing companies around? I haven't seen anything for miles." Yeah, man," he chuckled. "There's not much out here at all. You're about 3 hours from the nearest anything, man. You want to catch a ride with me into the station? I've got a phone there you can use, or computer, or whatever. No catch, man." He seemed alright, patting the seat excitedly. "Okay, man, I really appreciate it," I said as I hopped into the car. It was surprisingly clean, aside from the few moon pie wrappers on the floorboards. It was a pretty fun ride, to be honest. Winkle started blaring some Def Leppard for a while, then turned it down and gave me the same gist about the town that I did for you guys above. To say I was intrigued would be an understatement. This was just the kind of thing I loved to find while traveling. It took us about an hour to get into town, and we went right to the station. Winkle excitedly showed me the place, taking me through the little history it had about his parents and how he runs it all now. While we were inside, it seemed that word had somehow already gotten around that new guy was in town. A few of the residents were out on the church lawn with the pastor, peeking down the road to check on us. I think they thought they were being sly, but we could tell. Winkle showed me the phone and I called down for the nearest tow truck. About 5 days, then we have to figure out what's wrong with it. Could be another 5 days, is what they told me. I think Winkle was eavesdropping, because as soon as they said it, he came ripping out of the back room. "You can stay at the complex, or you can stay over here, but I've only got this old blow-up mattress. It kind of sucks. I'll introduce you to Mr. Rags." Before I had time to answer, he was out the door, jogging down to the complex. The residents outside just watched as he bounced to the front entrance intercom and buzzed the number. "Mr. Rags, 1701. A few of the residents looked annoyed, like this wasn't the first time he's tried to get a hold of him for one thing or another. I couldn't tell what they were saying, but he seemed to exchange a few words with the intercom before smiling and gesturing over to me. I crept out of the station entrance hesitantly and walked myself over to him. "Mr. Rags says to come on up. Fair warning, this place is a little weird, but I don't think it'll ever hurt you. Mr. Rags is also a little funny, we'll say, but he's really nice. I told him I have a good feeling about you, man. Let's go. He gestured for me to follow him through the big iron doors of the entrance. As soon as I stepped through the threshold, I knew I wouldn't be leaving. I don't know any other way to describe it, but it felt like my entire life had been lived here. It was like I'd been here for 100 years and knew every little indescribable detail of the place. It was welcoming, warming, but also horrifying. We brushed past a few potted plants and low-sitting chairs to reach the small, antique-looking elevator. Everything in the lobby was bathed in a nice warm glow from the Art Deco-style lights on the walls. The elevator didn't seem unsafe, and it had just been inspected, so I wasn't too afraid of going up 17 floors in it. We hopped in and Winkle hit the number. It clicked with a comforting tactile sound, and the doors closed as it pushed us up towards our destination. Winkle was grinning the entire time, which started to freak me out. He was a little too excited for me to meet this Mr. Rags. The trip took way less time than I had thought it would, almost like we went up 17 floors in 5 seconds. The bell dinged, and the doors opened to a small entryway, with one ornate-looking door at the end of it. 1701, it read on a plaque above it. Winkle nodded ahead, beckoning me to knock on the door. The entry was sparse. A little table with a vase whose flowers were looking just shy of death stood to our left, and a small couch sat opposite of it. I tiptoed off the elevator and towards the door. As we drew closer, I could hear a series of locks begin their sequence, and the door slowly crept open. Mr. Rags stood there, a soft smile on his face. "You must be Zach," he said. "Mr. Van Winkle explained your predicament over the intercom. I hear it could be a week or more until you have a working vehicle?" "Yes, sir, but I don't want to be a bother. I can find a motel around here. I'm sure there's something in the next town." "Oh? Well, there is another small town up the way, about an hour or so. But the motel there closed down years ago. It's mainly a family-run store, some knick-knack shops and a gas station." I felt a little defeated. The entire time I was traveling, I'd never run into an issue like this. I was quite literally stranded in the middle of nowhere. "I can see this situation must be difficult for you, but I wouldn't worry. You seem like a guy with a good head on his shoulders. Do you do anything for work?" he asked. I hadn't worked a real job in years, but I was pretty handy. My dad had shown me basic repair work besides cars, and I feel like a genius when I have access to Google. "About a year ago, we had a resident move out rather abruptly. He actually worked for the complex, for me, really. Odds and ends, repair work and whatnot. You strike me as a man who could make his way in a situation like that." He was a particularly clean person, so the things he left behind are in immaculate condition. If you'd like, why don't you stay there for the week? Once your car is repaired, you can be on your way. If the place doesn't grow on you, that is." He grinned a peculiar smile, stretching his face. In that moment, I swear I could feel something extremely, alarmingly wrong with his smile, but his charm won me over. We talked a little while longer, and I agreed to check out the apartment on the 8th floor, apartment 87. It feels eerie typing this out now, 9 years later. The apartment was, in every sense, immaculate. It was fully furnished, complete with blankets, bedding, towels, and even some food in the fridge. Things seemed to be dusted even, like they have been waiting on someone to move in. To keep my rambling down, as this post has already gone on long enough, I did stay the full week, and then some. My car took 3 weeks to get back in working order, and cost me more than I'd hoped. Those first 3 weeks I did some small repairs, helped different residents out, and got to know a good portion of them. It was honestly the most fun and fulfilling time I had experienced in a number of years. I also experienced my first of many, many strange experiences at the complex. I have plenty of stories to share, but I'll leave you with the first. The first night in, after dealing with everything that day, I was exhausted. I opted to sleep on the couch with a blanket in the lieu of sleeping between the sheets of an unknown bed. Just before falling asleep, I heard a shrill animal scream outside. It sent shivers down my spine and made me leap up towards the window. As I tried focusing my eyes to the darkness outside, a small, whitish figure was standing down by a bundle of cacti. It took a few moments, but as my eyesight adjusted, I could tell it was Mr. Rags. He was holding what looked like a wild goat. There are plenty in the region, and the hills around the town seemed like perfect terrain for them. I figured maybe he was just out for a stroll and found the poor thing wounded. But I soon realized that Mr. Rags was the one who had wounded it. I stared in disbelief as he gnawed at its neck, its body slowly falling lifeless below him. It took 2 or 3 minutes before he finished, as he gently laid it down, inspected it, then picked it back up over his shoulder. I was still sitting in the window, shrouded by the darkness of the room when he looked up. I froze. But I swear I saw him give a sheepish grin before he walked off towards the front of the building. I expected him to come knocking at my door, but that time never came. Instead, the next night, a note was slid under my door. To our newest resident, we humbly welcome you to your first night of supper downstairs in the cafe. Tonight, we're serving curried goat.